We were 26 years old. We knew that 2 to 3 years down the line we'll be married and there'll be tons of responsibilities on our head. So this is the right time. Hi, my name is Harsh. I'm the co-founder and CEO of YourQuote, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Backstage with Millionaires. Today I'm going to talk about my journey, my entrepreneurial journey, and of building and failing 4 startups before stumbling upon YourQuote, and how the lessons from all those failures sort of helped me in building YourQuote the way it is. I've grown up in a household which was a mix of creativity as well as very rational and analytical household. My mother is a professor of economics, and my father has been a banker, even though he is an artist by heart. He paints, he writes, he sings, plays all the instruments, and that's the sort of upbringing I got. So creativity was always there, but immediate focus was always studies, and I fell in love with science in 6th class, and that's how I got enamored by the engineering entrance examination. I mean, right from 9th class I sort of knew that I had to go to an engineering college. I have to become a researcher or a scientist, and I was lucky to be provided with a lot of books in my household. My father has this huge library, and he would order so many biographies of scientists, statesmen, politicians, artists, writers, musicians, all of them, and that's what I grew up with. I used to write as a child as well, but I stopped writing during my engineering preparation day, and the moment I got into my college, which was IIT Delhi, I again started writing. So I studied engineering physics with the hope of becoming a researcher or a scientist later, and science was the passion all throughout. And it was a very interesting time, 2007 to 11, because there were 2 revolutions or movements that were happening at IIT at that time. One was, there was an IIT alumni by the name of Chetan Bhagat who had written a book which became the super bestseller, and it was a novel which was unusual for an IITian to write. And when I arrived in college, we had all read that book, and it was about the life at campus in IIT Delhi. And the second movement was the startup movement. Flipkart had started in 2008, and that was by our alumni. And there was another startup called Foodie Bay at that time, which later became Zomato, which was already in its infancy at that time. So a bit of startup, a bit of writing was what I grew up in my college. So it became very natural for me to sort of try to merge these 2 things, that I'm writing, I'm also interested in startups, so why not start up about writing? So my first venture was very simple. It was called TheWittyShit.com, and the idea was very simple: a website where you post your witty one-liners and we monetize it for you. Because as a writer, the problem that I faced was I could always get my long forms published, be it novels or an article in a newspaper or a short story, but 2-liners or witty one-liner, there was no way to monetize. And we thought at that time that t-shirts and merchandise could be a good avenue to post them on, and that's essentially what we focused on. So we printed a lot of these one-liners into t-shirts, sold it, gave royalty from the sales, much like people earn royalty from the books, to users. This business I started in 3rd year of college. In my final placements, I didn't sit in the placements. I went full-time with the venture, which was quite audacious as well as foolish at that time, because I didn't have any savings, and we could not raise funds because we were too novice about running such a venture, because we didn't realize the kind of cost that it would entail. We were always working with our interns from the college itself, whom we didn't have to pay. We would just give them a treat and they would work for us for free. But when you go full-time, you have to hire people, you have to pay them salary, then you have to take care of the burn and the cash flow and everything. So in 7 months, we had to fold up the business because we couldn't survive the grind of full-time entrepreneurship, and we couldn't raise money. And t-shirt printing is a cost-intensive business, unlike a pure tech business. So that's one of the learnings that I had at that time, that if we have to start a business, it has to be entirely tech driven without really any operational or cost heavy things. I mean, we don't want to, merchandise is not very scalable. There has been no billion-dollar t-shirt company. I mean, you have sports company, Puma or Nike, etc., but just a t-shirt company does not scale. So that's one thing which we learned. And secondly, another learning from that time was, I mean, there was a lot of ego issue between me and my co-founder at that time, because we were both wanting to be the CEOs. It was my idea, he became the CEO, a lot of ego hassles. And we did not onboard a technical co-founder at that time. So both of us were the marketing and the operations guy. And it became quite a tough battle there, and we also had our respective girlfriends involved in the venture, which became very messy. So one of the key learnings was, it was more about we couldn't manage the people well rather than the idea per se, and that's the reason we had to fold up. And funnily, I also wrote a book about it, which was published by Penguin Random House. It was called Because Shit Happened. So TheWittyShit, it was like a tribute to that entire journey. So after the venture collapsed, I sort of stayed away from entrepreneurship for good 4 years, and I did not want to get back to it, frankly, because it was too difficult, as well as I had lost faith in both my ability to run a venture. I wanted to pursue writing per se. And during that time, from 2012 to 2014, I underwent a series of, I went for this fellowship called Young India Fellowship. Thereafter, I went to Sciences Po in Paris for doing an exchange in urban policy. I was freelancing for a bunch of newspapers like The Hindu, Caravan, etc. And during that time, my writing portfolio as well as my writing journey evolved quite a lot. I mean, rather than being very, very commercially driven, I was more now literally driven as a writer. And that journey sort of helped. And I also saw myself using less and less of Blogger and WordPress, because the links, nobody would be clicking on the links if I posted on Facebook or Twitter. They would want to consume everything right there on the platform. And long form became very difficult to post because Facebook was not conducive to that. And people were also more keen on consuming short form. So when I quit the venture, TheWittyShit, I had booked the domain name YourQuote.in. And that was simply from the idea that why only famous people's quote are on Google? Why not my quotes or everybody's quotes are on Google? So I thought of democratizing it someday. But whenever I thought about starting this venture, the UI that I would see would be very much similar to Twitter. So people would be posting a short one-liner or a poem, and then they will have a portfolio, but it will be similar to Twitter. So what's the point of starting another Twitter? So our brainwave came at the time when we saw Prisma. Prisma was turning pictures into artwork. So we were like, we can turn the text into artwork as well by making small text superimposed on wallpaper, and the outcome could be a very beautiful pictorial post, and which could be in any language, because mobile allows you to toggle keyboards. So you can switch to Hindi, English, Marathi, any language that you wish. And it becomes very, very easy to pull that off. After I returned from France, from my exchange, I joined a venture-funded company in Delhi, and it was run by an IIT senior. And I was not happy with the way they were working, so I realized I can run a company much better. And the second thing was also about, I had made up enough money, both from my savings in France as well as after coming to India, that was more than what I used to earn as a writer for the previous 2 years. So that sort of gave me the courage that if I start now, I have decent capital to invest myself. And I onboarded 2 co-founders from IIT Delhi, my juniors, and they were of the opinion that 3 IITians, they will be able to raise funding very quickly, which clearly didn't happen. And when it came to giving the salary, handing out the salary to the employees we had hired at that time, both these co-founders backed out, and I had to pay with my savings. So my entire savings got bankrupted within 1 month of operations. And at that time, I was sort of begging for money as well as begging for co-foundership. And my condition was, I will onboard a co-founder with equal stakes if you take care of the finance situation, because I don't have any money left. And luckily that time Ashish came on board. He was working with another company. He was paying the salaries of my team, and he was also helping build the back end of the company. There's a long history about our association. We went to the same college at IIT Delhi. We met on the first day, I mean, when people ask me, how do you find your co-founder, or what made you realize that this is going to be your co-founder? My answer is quite funny, that the only thing we did together before starting up together was played football using tennis ball in the hostel corridors. I mean, we kept playing in the first year of college, and then the next 3 years we did different things. I was writing, he was playing games. But that 1 year of bonding and trust by playing a silly sport together sort of created that kind of bond. And when I started up again after 2015, Ashish was the first person I called, and funnily he said no, because he was already working with a company. And then 4 months later he was moving to another company, and that time again I called him, and this time he was of the mindset that let's try it, because we were 26 years old. We knew that 2 to 3 years down the line we'll be married and there'll be tons of responsibilities on our head, so this is the right time. And then he came full time and he took the front end as well, so we minimized our burn to zero, because both Android and back end was taken care of by him, and I was doing all the ancillary work, right from operations, community building, growth, product design, etc. So for a good 1 year we ran it like this. I mean, on our own savings, very minimal savings. And one interesting thing we did during that time when we started YourQuote was we moved to the Himalayas, we moved to mountains, and we realized that we don't want to waste our time interacting with investors, because they only want traction, and until we get traction there's no point in wasting our time in going for several meetings in Delhi. So we went to Himachal, and I remember investors reaching us out and we're like, we're not interested. For the first 3 months we just kept building, grew to 10,000 users organically, and it was a very fulfilling time for us, because Himalayas sort of sedated us with a lot of inspiration for writing poetry, right way of building things, not being greedy. It made us very humble about the way we were building, and that sort of helped. And it also became a very good marketing gimmick, because we could not sell what we were doing to the medias, but they were interested in how we were building it in Himalayas. So digital nomads, the term Times of India covered us, that these are digital nomads of India building out. So we got a good brand awareness without having to spend a penny, because of an interesting story that we were living rather than what we were building. And that gave us some initial traction as well. And it took us almost a year after that to grow it organically to almost 100,000 users. And that's when a VC came in, IDG led the round, we raised $1 million. And it's been almost 2 years since then. And we have grown to almost 2 million users now, only on the app. And if you include the web, it's 4.5 million users. So that's how we have grown. And we have pioneered this concept called open mics, branded open mics across India. So like how TED does guest lectures across several cities without really having to send their representatives, we have conducted over 800 events across 110 cities in India and abroad. And these are open mics where common people like us come and perform their poetry, stand-up or storytelling, or even original music. And we have hosted over 15,000 videos on our YouTube channel, and many of them have become mini celebrities in India and abroad. So that's what we have been able to do. So the thing that we envisioned long back when I booked the domain name YourQuote.in, that why only famous people have their quotes up on Google. Now over 1.8 million users of ours have their quotes up on Google. So if you search for my name followed by quotes, my entire repository of content is there on Google. So it has sort of, what YourQuote does is it immortalizes your creativity. If it lets you own your words, and essentially that's what we want to do for the rest of the world. A lot of people have concern that why are you building a writing platform in this age of TikTok and video and all that, and we believe that as more and more consumption driven platforms are coming, the sort of meaninglessness of those platforms are also increasing. I mean, how long can you consume something as inane and meaningless as a TikTok video? It's surely entertaining, but this is also the time when, because of so much media, there's so much of loneliness and depression, and mental health issues is big. And I think writing is the cure for all. I mean, because it allows you to spend time with yourself. I think one of the greatest features on our platform is our compose screen, which is so empty. It's like you're just talking to yourself. And so many people have written to us that we have helped them find peace. We have helped them move on from their breakup. We have helped them get over their suicidal tendencies and so on, simply because of the platform which allows them to communicate with themselves and feel good about themselves. So yeah, so that's been very fulfilling. I think one of the things that makes us get up every day in the morning and come to office is simply because the way we have touched the lives of people. We have built a very, very meaningful platform. Your Quote has put meaning on the priority. So if you're posting something, people will come and say, hey, I have felt exactly the same way. I remember last month I was doing something. So it's very, Reddit-like in that sense for the Indian community. So very meaningful, sophisticated, quality audience, and which automatically poses a question in the minds of the investors that how big is the market size? Because total number of users, but we believe we are not only poised to be an Indian product. We have 4% of our users are from across the world, and it won't be too hard for us to scale because we don't see any kind of product which is sort of a marriage of Twitter and Instagram for the world, which allows people. Think of a writing app on the mobile. You have a photo app, you have Instagram. For video, you have TikTok or YouTube. You have social networking, you have Facebook. What is there for writing? There's nothing. Even Medium, which is the biggest blogging platform, it's very good for consumption, not for writing on mobile. So that's the problem, and that all these blogging platforms, there are journaling apps like Evernote, etc., Google Keep, but there's no social blogging, microblogging platform which is around creative expression, which is around writing your day-to-day life and for common everyday people rather than for professionals. So that's the niche which we want to capture and we want to represent for the rest of the world, that there's an app which is not only allows you to express but also find like-minded people who express in your own language. And essentially we believe Your Quote is like a writing school, and writing school has to have good teachers as well as a good cohort. So we have intentionally, for each and every language, we have a profile which is essentially a teacher profile. So there's Your Quote Baba for English, Didi for Hindi, Dada for Bengali. And these are profiles which give prompts every day, which gives lessons on writing every day, which shares works of the great writers in that language with the users to expose them with what good literature is and sort of evolve them in their journey. So just expression can give you peace once, but if you understand expression, if you become better at it, it's a very fulfilling journey. And I can tell it from my own experience. Writing is the only thing that makes me feel not alone, and that's a very, very complete feeling. As a person, you feel that there's nothing that you need beyond yourself. You're complete by yourself, because writing is the way to surprise yourself. You write something and you read it and you are surprised that okay, that my thought could lead me to something which I never even thought about. And that's the kind of surprise that we are offering to our users every single day. So that's the capsule of what we have been able to do so far. So that was my journey as an entrepreneur. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like the video, please share it with your friends who you think it might help. I'll try to answer all your questions. Feel free to ask in the comments below. I'll get back to you in the comments itself. And if you write, I would strongly recommend you to check out Your Quote, and I hope to welcome you there. Thank you.